In your pocket right now is a piece of technology built on a supply chain that spans 3 continents. You think Amazon or Apple invented this level of hyper-efficiency? They didn't. The blueprint for your 2026 global economy was forged 800 years ago. It was written in blood on a gold tablet by a man the world remembers as a monster, but who was actually history's most ruthless supply chain architect, Genghis Khan. We've been lied to. History books paint Genghis Khan as a mindless whirlwind of violence, a scourge of God who left nothing but pyramids of skulls. That's the story the victims told to explain why they lost. But if you look at the ledgers, a different picture emerges. Genghis Khan wasn't just a warlord. He was the first CEO of Globalism Inc. At some point around 1206, Genghis Khan faced a simple calculation. He could kill the merchants and steal what they carried. Or he could protect the merchants, achieve a total corporate monopoly on violence, and tax everything they would ever carry again. He chose the latter. He performed a hostile takeover of the world's most lucrative trade routes, liquidated the middleman, and rebranded the carnage as the Great Peace. Before the rise of the Mongol Empire, the Silk Road was a fractured, high-risk nightmare of violent geographic arbitrage. It was a series of broken handoffs. A merchant from Byzantium would sell to a middleman in Persia, who sold to a nomad in Central Asia, who eventually reached the gates of China. Every border meant a new bribe. Every mountain pass meant a new bandit. The transaction costs, the hidden fees of doing business, were so high that only the ultra-wealthy could afford a single ounce of cinnamon. Then came the Great Khan. He looked at the map of the 13th century and saw exactly what a modern hedge fund manager sees: market inefficiency. The Mongol strategy was elegant in its brutality. First, he centralized the chaos. He didn't just defeat his rivals. He erased the borders that made trade expensive. By the time of his death, the Mongol Empire covered over 12 million square miles. A merchant could travel from the Pacific Ocean to the Black Sea without ever leaving a single jurisdiction. It was the world's first continental free trade zone. But a market needs more than just space. It needs infrastructure. The Khan built the YAM, the first global just-in-time logistics network. Think of it as a medieval fiber optic cable made of muscle and bone. Every 25 to 30 miles, he established a relay station with fresh horses and supplies. It allowed a message or a high-value cargo to travel 200 miles in a single day. In an era where the average speed of commerce was 15 miles a day, the Khan was operating at warp speed. He shortened the world. He didn't just trade goods. He traded in the most valuable commodity of all: security. The Mongols essentially invented violence as a service, a subscription model where merchants paid the empire to keep everyone else from robbing them. The cost of breaking the chain was so high that no rational actor would dare attempt it. The Khan had cornered the market on safety, and he was leasing it back to the world for a 10% cut. Now, let us open the case file on the Wolf of the Steppes and reveal the shadow behind the success. To understand how the Mongol machine actually functioned, you have to stop looking at the map and start looking at the paperwork. In the modern world of 2026, we live and die by our digital footprint, our credit scores, our biometric IDs, our verified blue checks. We think this level of surveillance and authorization is a product of the Silicon Age. It isn't. The Mongols perfected the verified user experience in 1210, and they did it with heavy metal. The mechanism of the Pax Mongolica rested on 3 pillars: a code of law that functioned like a zero-trust algorithm, a physical hardware key for travelers, and a venture capital system that invented the concept of too big to fail. First, there was the algorithm, the Yassa. This wasn't a set of moral suggestions. The Yassa was a cold, clinical operating system. It didn't care if you were a Nestorian Christian, a Persian Muslim, or a Chinese Taoist. It only cared if you were a reliable node in the network. If you were a merchant who went bankrupt for the 3rd time, the Yassa didn't offer debt restructuring. It ordered your execution. It was the ultimate form of skin in the game. It purged the market of speculators. In the Mongol market, there was no moral hazard, because the penalty for failure was total. But how did you prove you were part of this elite network? Picture a merchant arriving at the gates of Samarkand in 1235. The guards step forward, hands on swords. Then, he lifts a small tablet from his belt. Solid gold, engraved with a falcon. The mood changes instantly. The gates open. Fresh horses appear. Food appears. Protection appears. Because that tablet isn't jewelry. It's a Paiza, a physical API key to the most powerful logistics network on Earth. You were exempt from local shakedowns. And to harm a holder of a Paiza was to declare war on the Khan himself. When 2 Mongol envoys were killed by the Sultan of Khwarezmia in 1218, Genghis didn't send a strongly worded letter. He sent 200,000 men to dismantle every brick of that empire, until the Sultan's name was a footnote in a blood-stained ledger. Trust is the ultimate lubricant for capital. But here's the part history books rarely mention. The Mongols didn't just conquer trade routes. They invested in them. Enter the Ortog. This is the smoking gun of Mongol finance. The Mongols had the muscle, but they lacked the logistics expertise of the sedentary world. So, they created merchant associations, the birth of the joint stock company. Let's break down the equity split. The Mongol warlord put up the Series A capital, say, 1,000 silver ingots looted from a Persian treasury. The Uyghur or Muslim merchants provided the sweat equity and took the physical risk. If the caravan was lost to a sandstorm, the Mongol state absorbed the loss. But if it hit the markets in Venice, they split the profits 70 over 30. They invented limited liability, backed by the threat of total annihilation. The Mongol Empire wasn't an army that happened to have a country. It was a private equity firm that happened to have an army. You were safe? Yes. You were prosperous? Perhaps. But you were a cog in a machine, designed to extract rent with surgical precision. And as any systems engineer will tell you, a perfectly optimized system with zero friction has no way to stop a disaster once it starts. You live in a world of optimized fragility. In 2026, you've seen how a single blocked canal, or a localized virus, can paralyze the global economy in a heartbeat. You are told this is a modern problem. But the Mongols didn't just invent the global supply chain. They invented the global collapse. Every economic miracle is eventually followed by a biological default. By 1347, the Mongol machine was running at peak capacity. Goods were moving faster than they ever had in human history. But there was a hitchhiker on those silk bales. The Yersinia pestis bacterium, the Black Death, didn't need a golden Paiza to travel. The Mongols optimized for speed, but completely ignored the tail risk of a biological contagion. The relay stations provided the shelter. The grain shipments provided the food. The Mongols had built a 4,000-mile superhighway for a silent killer. When the Mongol army found itself dying of the plague outside the walls of Kaffa, they didn't just retreat. They engaged in the first recorded act of biological warfare, catapulting infected corpses over the walls. When the Genoese merchants fled Kaffa and sailed back to Europe, they brought the systemic contagion with them. The Mongol supply chain was brutally efficient at distributing death. The forensic evidence of this biological default is staggering. The resulting plague decimated specific demographics along the trade routes is less than has home. Zero hash is greater than it wiped out an estimated 25 to 30 million Europeans, roughly 30% to 50% of the continent's entire population. It slashed China's population from approximately 120 million down to 65 million over the course of the 14th century. And it eradicated nearly a third of the population in the Middle East. It was the greatest margin call in human history. The network effect became a death sentence. The more connected a city was to the Mongol trade routes, the faster it burned. The Ortog investment groups collapsed as their partners died in the streets of Florence and Samarkand. The too big to fail administration found itself presiding over a graveyard. So, here is your verdict for 2026. We are currently rebuilding the Mongol dream. We demand the speed of the Yam and the convenience of the Paiza in every app on our phones. We have removed every ounce of friction from the market. But friction is what slows down a fire. Here is the dark truth history books refuse to admit. Genghis Khan's globalized supply chain ultimately killed tens of millions more people through the transmission of the Black Death than his armies ever did with swords. Are today's tech monopolies building the exact same fragile superhighway, just waiting for the next pathogen or cyber contagion? We have the digital Silk Road. But we must ask ourselves, what are we transporting today that we aren't yet prepared to pay for? In the modern ledger, we've traded our resilience for a 10% discount and a 48-hour delivery window. Are you the merchant, or are you the cargo? Because in the ledger of history, every debt must eventually be paid.